Okay, again for today, we'll be continuing our discussion on the Bill of Rights, particularly for Section 6 to 10 of the Article 3 of the 1987 Constitution. So Article 3 again is the Bill of Rights. So for this morning, no, or for today, we'll be discussing 5 sections. For Section 6, we'll be talking about the liberty of abode and the right to travel. Under Section 7, we have the right to information. For Section 8, we have the right to form associations. For Section 9, the right to just compensation. In Section 10, the non-impairment laws. Now, I would suggest students, kung halimbawa po, dahil pinag-aaralan naman po natin pag-aaralan natin ang sections 1 to 22, I would suggest if you could make a summary, no, of per section, kagaya po nito. So kunyari, section 1 talks about life, liberty, and property. For section 2, issuance of search warrant and warrant of arrest. So just get the key terminologies or the summary per section so that it will not be hard for you to review all sections and to recall the provision per section, just in case this will come out in your examination. So let's begin class with section 6. Section 6 provides the liberty of abode and of changing the same within the limit prescribed by law shall not be impaired except upon lawful order of the court. Neither shall the right to travel be impaired in the interest of national security, public safety, or public health as may be provided by law. Now, Section 6 talks about 2 things. One is the liberty of abode, and number 2, the right to travel. Now, I think the fundamental question for Section 6 is, what do we mean, class, by liberty of abode and travel? Liberty of abode and travel is the right of a person to have his home in whatever place chosen by him and thereafter to change it at will and to go where he pleases without interference of any source. Okay? So malinaw naman po sa definisyon o kahulugan ng liberty of abode and travel. Ang abode po, class, ang ibig sabihin po niyan ay malaya kang pumili kung saan ka po mag-i-stay o kung saan ka po titira. Okay? So, discussing about abode springs another argument, which is the distinction of domicile and residence. Okay? Magkaiba po si residence at domicile, but these can all be abode. Okay? This is under the category of abode. Okay? Domicile and residence are both houses na tinutuluyan mo. Okay? But their distinction lies on the nature of your stay and the duration of your stay. Okay? For residence, this is where you are living at the moment, be it temporary or for a long period of time. While domicile is where you intend, okay? You intend to come back even if you are gone for a long period of time, or even if you will be gone for a long period of time. Now, let me explain this briefly. Okay, residence, class, for instance, right now, let's say you are living in San Miguel, Iriga City. Pinanganak ka sa San Miguel, doon ka nag-i-stay hanggang ngayon. San Miguel, Iriga City is both your residence and domicile. Okay? Residence kasi that is where you are living at the moment. Okay? Na hindi mo alam kung temporary or for a long period of time. And San Miguel, Iriga City will also be your domicile because doon mo balak plus bumalik. Okay? At babalik ka doon sa lugar na yon because that is your home or that is your house. Okay? Doon ka pinanganak, doon ka ni-raise. So, babalik ka doon. Now, for example, you are planning to go to Naga City to study. Okay? So, by balak ka, kunyari na pumunta ng Naga to study there for your senior high school, for instance. Now, when you go to Naga City will become your residence because that is where you will be living, be it for a temporary or for a long period of time. Okay? Naga City will be your residence. But your domicile will still be in Iriga City because you have the intention to come back even if you will be gone for a long period of time. Okay? So I hope you understand now the distinction between domicile and residence. Sir, in accordance with section I'm sorry. In accordance with the meaning of liberty of abode and travel, the right of a person to have his home. So can I change my domicile? Yes, you can change your domicile, because if you are planning to go to Naga City and you want to stay there permanently and you don't have the plan to go back to Iriga City, then your domicile now will be Naga City. And your residence pwede ding Naga City kung doon ka magi-stay. Okay? If you will be going to Manila, your residence will be Metro Manila or Manila City of Manila, but your domicile will be Naga City. Now, if you want to again to go to Manila and you want there to stay permanently, that will now become your domicile. Okay? So I hope clear po sa atin ang pagkakaiba nitong domicile and residence. Now, remember class, no? A person whose liberty of abode and the right to travel. Okay, dalawa po ito. Hindi ko na lang nailagay. A person whose liberty of abode and right to travel is violated, a person can file for a petition for a writ of habeas corpus. Remember this ha? The petition for a writ of habeas corpus against another holding him in detention. So any person class, kunyari, dinakip ka ng mga otoridad for no reason, you are prevented from going out of the country for no reason, no, you can file before a court for a petition questioning the legality, questioning the validity ng pagharang sa'yo at pag-restrain sa'yo from traveling and from choosing kung saan ka mag-stay. Okay? So, a person can file for a writ of habeas corpus. Now, remember that we have three writs, no? But I will be naming two today. We have a writ of habeas corpus number 1, and number 2, you have writ of amparo. Okay? So, writ of amparo, WRIT din, pareho po nito, and then of amparo, AMPARO. The writ of amparo naman, class, can be filed if a person is is compelled, no, to release an information na hindi naman dapat. Later on, I'll be discussing that in a separate discussion or perhaps separate presentation. But those are the two, the writ of habeas corpus and the writ of amparo. But for today, ito ang gusto kong emphasize, the writ of habeas corpus. This is a writ, this is a petition that a person, you as a person, can file before a court if you are prevented by the government from traveling to another country. This is what happened, class, with Gloria Macapagal Arroyo when she was prevented by then former Secretary of Justice Laila de Lima to go out of the country for health purpose. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo filed for a writ of habeas corpus because she was asserting during that time, she was insisting na wala namang pending na case laban sa kanya. So there was no reason for her to be held in custody ng gobyerno. Okay, so sana po malinaw sa atin, no, si section 6 tungkol po sa kalayaan nating pumili ng kung saan tayo titira at kalayaan din nating pumili kung saan tayo magta-travel. Kaya nga, class, malaya tayong bumiyahe kahit saan natin gusto. Except, di ba, may exemption po doon if you'll go back to that particular to the provision, no, to the section of to section 6. The exemption is in the interest of national security, public safety, or public health. Kagaya na ngayon, class, nangyayari ngayon sa COVID-19, no? The lockdown preventing the government preventing us from traveling is not illegal, and it's not in violation of section 6 because we are under public health emergency. And remember, under section 6, it's an exemption. Pag public health ang concern, pwede tayong mapigilan, no, na bumiyahe. Pwede tayong pigilan na pumili kung saan natin gustong tumira. Okay? Because that is an exemption. Public safety, for example, kunyari may terrorism attack, let's say in Marawi City, no? So we cannot just go to Marawi City, for instance, kung nagbabakbakan pa doon. So hindi po 'yun violation ng ating karapatan sa pagbiyahe kasi may tamang rason, and those reasons are under Section 6. Okay, so I hope you understand Section 6 now. Let's move now to Section 7. The right of the people to information on matters of public concern shall be recognized. Access to official records and to documents and papers pertaining to official acts, transactions, or decisions, as well as to government research data used as basis for policy development shall be afforded the citizen subject to limitations as may be provided by law. Okay. This is the right to information. Actually, class, meron na po tayong batas ngayon. We have the Freedom of Information Law. The Freedom of Information Law is in consonance. Ibig sabihin, this is in accordance. This is to satisfy what Section 7 provides. So dapat may karapatan daw ang mga tao na makahingi ng impormasyon, na mabigyan ng information which has something to do with matters on public concern. Kung ito yung mga matters na maapektuhan ang publiko. Okay? So, we as public have the right to know. Okay? So, naka-indicate po Section 7 all of these specific documents. Naka-enumerate po siya dito. Now, what are these why do we need the right to information on matters of public concern? One is to have access to official records for exercise of rights. And number two, arguments in support of right. And number three, constitutionally or validity of implementing law. Okay? So one, access to official records for exercise of right. No? So as a public, as part of the public, we have now the right to have an access to official records. Since kinakailangan may paglaban natin ang karapatan natin, how can we even fight for our rights if we don't know on the first place kung tama ba yung ginagawa ng gobyerno para sa publiko? Okay? What are these examples of official records? Let's say, or documents or information. Let's say the statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth or SALN. Okay? So, ang SALN class ay obligado ang sino mang public officer, any public officer is mandated by law to submit his or her SALN. In their SALN, it stipulates, it indicates their assets. Pag sinabi nating assets class, we are talking about their properties, their gains, no? Pag properties, lahat ng properties nila, i-declare po nila sa SALN nila. Bahay, lupa, kotse, even their rest houses, kung may mga bahay pa sila sa ibang bansa, they have to declare that on their SALN, because those are their assets. When you say liabilities, we are talking about kautangan. May utang ba itong government officer na ito? Even those property which incur expenses, no? Yung mga property ng tao na yon na nagko-cost para sa tao na maglabas siya ng pera or gumastos siya, those are liabilities. Next, net worth. Magkano ba yung kabuuang sahod nitong taong ito, nitong government officer na ito? Kasi tayo bilang publiko, karapatan nating malaman kung ito bang tao ay may posibilidad na nagnanakaw siya sa gobyerno. Okay? And through his or her SALN, we can determine definitively, through assessing all of those indicated in his or her SALN whether there is what we call an unexplained wealth. Unexplained wealth, meaning hindi may paliwanag na yaman. Pag meron po kasing tinatawag na unexplained wealth, it's already a justifiable suspicion. Ibig sabihin, may tinatawag natin siyang tamang hinala. Okay? Pwede kasing tama yung hinala na may ginagawa siyang hindi tama, kaya nag-gain siya ng ganun. So, titingnan mo din, yun bang properties niya ay pwedeng mabili ng isang taong may ganitong klase ng sahod. Okay, get the point? And now, ima-match mo siya with all the assets, with all the liabilities. Titingnan mo ngayon kung baka may baka baka ang mahal-mahal ng properties niya at hindi natin naipaliwanag kung paano niya na-purchase on acquire yung properties na yun, no, with his or her salary na ganun kababa. Okay? So, all of those things will be indicated in his or her SALN. So, access to official records for exercise of right. So, kinakailangan ma-access natin itong mga records nito katulad ng SALN para makita natin at may paglaban natin ang karapatan natin. Number 2, arguments in support of right. And number 3, constitutionally or validity of implementing law. So, I will be discussing number 3 part. Ito kasing number 2, it has something to do with number 1. Itong number 3, constitutionally or validity of implementing law. I will be discussing this in a separate topic because it is in relation with other sections from section 11 to 22. So, I'll be having a separate discussion on this. Okay, so ito na muna po ang tandaan natin, 1 and 2. Okay. Ito number 2 kasi class, arguments in support of right. Pag nakakuha tayo ng data natin, no, ng information coming from official records and documents from the government, no, we can now support our argument in support of our right. No? For example, the Filipino people have the right to know the health of the president. Okay? Now, the health of the president is already, or for example, the medical record of a president should be a public record. Okay. Now, getting or acquiring this medical record would support our right, no? At ang argumento natin na malaman ang kalagayan o kondisyon ng ating pangulo. For example, because we deserve to know it. We have the right to know whether our president is fit, is physically fit, no, to discharge his or her duty. Okay. So, I might again have an impassing discussion on number 2 and number 3 on the succeeding sections of the Bill of Rights. Now, let's move now to the scope of the right. Gaano ba kalawak itong sakop ng karapatan to right, sa right to information? No? Lahat ba ng information pwede nating makuha sa gobyerno? Wala man lang bang privacy ang gobyerno pagdating sa pag-disclose o paglalabas ng record sa tao? So these are the scopes of our right. Number 1, the right embraces all public records. Lahat ng records class, no, na may kinalaman ng taong bayan, we deserve to know it. Okay, 1. What are another example of public records? Minutes of meetings or hearings na ginagawa ng Kongreso, ng Senado, even our local government unit, provincial government, this should be made, no, for this should be made or this should be disclosed in public. Kung sabing disclosed, dapat may labas siya sa publiko, no? Kinakailangan even blatter reports, even again SALNs, even auditing report, no, this should be made in public. Number 2, it is limited to citizens only, but is without prejudice to the right of aliens to have access to records of cases where they are litigants. Class, remember this. Ang mga, pag sabi po natin class alien, we are talking about foreign national. Okay, this is the legal term for foreigners. They are aliens to our country, meaning hindi naman sila taga dito. Ganun yun. That's the idea, that's the context, no? Hindi sila taga dito, kaya they are called as aliens. But this should not be interpreted literally. Aliens again refers to foreign nationals. Now, the right to information is limited sa ating mga Pilipino lang. But there is an exception. Kung yung mga foreign national or the aliens are involved in the case, meaning ibig sabihin they are the litigants, sila yung inuusig, sila yung akusado, they have the right to know. No? They have the right to information. They can enjoy now the right to information. Pwede silang humingi ng informasyon in view of public records. No? So they have the right to that. And lastly, its exercise is subject to such limitations as may be provided by law. What are these limitations? Number 1, public records exempted. Number 2, burden on government to justify withholding dito kompleto. Hindi siya complete. Okay, I'll be discussing this in a separate discussion siguro kasi hindi siya complete for the limitations of the right. Okay. Anyway, these limitations on the right, in short, just to capsulize the limitations on the right, hindi naman sinasabi dito class na may karapatan pa rin ang gobyerno na i-keep at gawing confidential yung mga records na makaka-incriminate sa gobyerno. Ibig sabihin, kinakailangan ng utos ng korte muna bago maglabas si government ng record para gamitin yung record laban sa kung sino man tao. Kasi lalo na kung yung mga record nila ay very confidential. Like for example, auditing report, gaano ba pag sabing auditing report, let's say yung Makati building noon na overpriced daw. Okay, so si Commission on Audit nag-conduct ng assessment kung yung presyo ba ng mga materyales na ginamit sa paggawa ng building ay tama or meron bang tinatawag na business under the table. Okay, so kinakailangan wag muna maglabas si COA or si gobyerno ng report kasi baka gamitin din yon laban sa kanila na hindi maayos yung pagkaka-audit nila or something like that. They have to double check also. Okay, let's move now to Section 8. The right of the people, including those employed in the public and private sectors, to form unions, associations, or societies for purposes not contrary to law shall not be abridged. Okay? So under Section 8 plus, madali lang ito. To Section 8, binibigyang karapatan at kalayaan ang mga empleyado kahit pa po yan sa publiko o pang-pribado na mag-form ng union, association, no, which should not be contrary to law. Usually class, mandated naman ng mga kumpanya na mag-form ng mga kunyari employees association, employees union, kunyari sa school naman faculty association, yung mga ganun. Kasi these unions, this association would raise the problem on behalf of the entire employee. No, sila po yung magbibigay, sila po yung mag-air out ng sentimiento ng mga empleyado sa administrasyon ng kumpanya. Okay, so that Section 8 gives right to employees to form their unions and therefore exercising their right, no, to air out their problem to their companies. No, but there is an exemption, there is a restriction. Dapat yung purpose ng pagtatayo ng union should not be contrary to law. Hindi naman pwede magtatayo ka ng union papabagsakin ng kumpanya. Hindi pwede magtatayo ka ng union para lang palitan yung may-ari ng kumpanya. No? So that is contrary to law. Hindi pwede magtatayo ka ng union tapos you will incite people or you will encourage other employees to go to strike nang wala naman dahilan, wala naman tamang dahilan. Those are contrary to law. Okay? So meaning of the right to form association, it's the freedom to organize or to be a member of any group or association, union or society, and to adopt the rules which the members judge most appropriate to achieve their purpose. Okay? So ganun lang po siya kadali. So may kalayaan tayo na sumama o umanib sa anumang asosasyon ng kumpanyang masasalihan natin, kumpanyang kinabibilangan natin for so long that those rules, no, are appropriate to achieve the purpose. Kung yung purpose natin ay magkaroon ng pantay-pantay na pagtrato sa mga empleyado, then that's a good association. Okay? Pero kung yung purpose naman natin, again, kunyari ang purpose ninyo ay pabagsakin ang kumpanya o kaya patalsikin yung mga nasa administrators ng company, so I think that's already contrary to law kung wala namang tamang dahilan. Now, let's move to Section 9. Private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. So, Section 9 talks about expropriation. Okay? Again, right? Section 9 talks about expropriation. EXPRO P-R-I-A-T-I-O-N. Expropriation. Ibig sabihin ng expropriation, dapat may may katumbas na halaga ang private property, lalo na kung halimbawa there is a what we call tawag dito, pagkuha ng public property without public property, for example, like kalsada, okay? That's public property. Now, when can Section 9 plus be applicable in that case, no? So for Section 9 to be enforced, let's say sa kahabaan ng kalsada class, meron tinatawag tayong, alam mo yung may mga, di ba, binabawin na road widening or road reconstruction. So for road widening, ang ginagawa noon class ay, kung ang bahay ninyo ay maaabot ngaya ka road widening, kakausapin ka ng gobyerno at wala kang choice dun, class. Hindi ka pwede magsabi sa gobyerno na, hindi pwede yun. Hindi nyo pwedeng kunin yung bakod, yung part na may bakod ko kasi private property ko yun. Okay? Na the government has the right to force you na magigiba yung pader na yun. Kunyari, that's your wall or that's your barricade, no, sa bahay ninyo. Why? Because under Section 9 class, may enforced ngayon yung tinatawag natin inherent powers of the government. Okay? So, discuss ko muna yung tatlong inherent powers. One is the eminent domain. Number 2 is the police power. And number 3 is the power of taxation. Okay. Now, for eminent domain, it's the right or power of the state or of those to whom the power has been lawfully delegated to take private property for public use upon paying to the owner a just compensation to be ascertained according to law. So, ibig sabihin, the government can invoke their right to eminent domain or their power of eminent domain. Kunyari, ayaw mong ibenta yung lupain mo, no? Ayaw mong ibenta yung, or for example, again, the example na binigay ko kanina, yung bakod ninyo. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin sa gobyerno na ayoko, no? Pwede ka ni gobyerno kasi makikinabang ang taong bayan doon kasi ano siya klase? Road widening. So it's for public use. It's for public betterment. So ang gagawin na ng gobyerno, the government will just ascertain kung ano yung just compensation mo in so far as your property is concerned. Okay, so wala tayong karapatan magsabi ng no kay government, lalo na kung i-invoke ni government sa eminent domain niya. Okay? Si police power naman, class, has been referred to as the power of the state to enact such laws or regulations in relation to persons and property as it promote public health, public morals, public safety, and the general welfare and convince of the people. So si police power, kaya nga siya police class, not necessarily or not literally referring to police officers. But under police power, may karapatan si gobyerno na i-enforce ang batas na meron tayo ngayon. Okay? For example, sinasabi ko nyari for COVID, itong nagka-pandemic, bawal lumabas. No? Sabi, diba? Bawal tayong pumunta sa ibang lugar. Okay? So we cannot just say, no, I am invoking my right to travel. No. The government has an inherent power of police power. The government can enact law or regulation. Walang batas na nagsasabing bawal kang lumabas sa bahay mo. Walang batas na nagsasabing bawal kang mag-travel. But, 'di ba, sa batas meron palaging exemption. And that exemption, as we have discussed earlier, is all about public health. So if the president will issue a national lockdown, it's already an ordinance. It's already a regulation. So the government now can enforce that, no, by invoking police power. And lastly, the power of taxation. It is the power of the state to impose charge or burden upon persons, property, or property rights for the use and support of the government and to enable it to discharge its appropriate functions. Okay? May karapatan si gobyerno na maningil ng buwis sa mga tao. Kasi class, tandaan po ninyo, kung wala pong taxes, walang perang gobyerno. And if the government, no, has no money at all, no, how do we expect the government to justify their function? No? Ibig sabihin, kung trabaho ng gobyerno na magtayo ng infrastructures, trabaho ng gobyerno na, let's say, magpagawa ng mga paaralan. Now, how can the government do that if they don't have money? And their money comes from taxation or comes from the taxes. So the government has the power to impose taxes, to impose charges to persons, property. Okay? Kahit sa tao o sa mga properties na meron tayo, para always po yan na may kaakibat na buwis. Okay? So going back again to Section 9. Private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. Pwede naman po na kunin ng gobyerno ang private property. Basta sabi ng Section 9 again, always po na may just compensation. May tamang halaga ang bawat property. Hindi pwedeng kunin lang ng gobyerno na wala kaming pakialam sa iyo. Kukunin na namin 'yan. Okay? So under eminent domain, kahit po may power si gobyerno sa eminent domain, according to the power of eminent domain, just compensation should be ascertained. Dapat ma-identify kung magkano yung halaga ng property na yun. And it should be the payment should be forwarded to the owner. No? So pag-uusap lang po 'yan. And finally, for Section 10, we have no law impairing the obligation of contract shall be passed. Okay? So this talks about kontrata naman. Napaka-technical class ng kontrata. Malalim na pag-uusap ito. Kasi in law, we have a separate subject for obligation and contract, oblicon. No? Kasi ang kontrata, napakalawak na pag-uusap. Uulitin ko ha. But insofar as our discussion is concerned, just to simplify, this is the scope of the term law and contract. The law, the enactment of which is prohibited, includes executive and administrative orders of the President, administrative orders issued by heads of departments, and ordinance enacted by local government. And secondly, the contract, the obligation of which is secured against impairment under the Constitution, includes contracts entered into by the government. Anyway, masyado na itong malawak. So I'll just shorten class, no? I'll just go back to the provision. Wala pong batas na pwedeng sumira, no? No law can destroy the essence of a contract. Again, no law can destroy the very core and spirit and value of a contract. That's why contract is very, very important. Written contract is very important. Even marriage contract, marriage is a contract. It's a contract between two persons. That's why in a marriage class, in a wedding, there is always a marriage certificate. And a marriage certificate is not just a simple certificate. It's a contract. And always nga na nami-mention sa mga cliches, no, na ang kasal ay hindi naman pwede na kung ayaw mo na, ayaw mo na. Again, when you enter a marriage, it's a contract na hindi pwedeng aatras ka na lang. Okay, so other forms of contract, employment contract. So pag pumirma ka, if you sign a contract, let's say for 3 years, you cannot just breach the contract. You cannot just go out and apply for another company while you have signed already a contract that you will be working with a company for, let's say, 1 year. Okay, so wala pong batas ang pwedeng mag-impair o sumira sa value ng kontrata. Okay? So that's for Section 10.